All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome. I'd like to invite Dr. Simeon Ajiboye to kickstart our program for this evening. Welcome, our professors. Good evening, Professor Schroeder. Good to see you. You're welcome.
Good evening.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
All right. Thank you, Prof. Good evening, Oga. Good evening, Professor Ega, the professor in the house, senior colleagues, and friends. We thank God for another time of our lecture series, of our program series, rather. We know that today is going to be another enlightening, illuminating session for all of us, that we are going to be further imbued with necessary theoretical tools in the field of pragmatics. We welcome all of us to the meeting. As you know that today we have our lectures reading series. As you know, how we usually do in the reading series as described on the platform, if you have taken time to read the description of the program we have today. So as we have usually and always been saying, that this is a study group, it is not an association. It's a place whereby we come together and we get equipped even for in the field of pragmatics and related disciplines, so that we'll be better off than where we are and to function effectively even in our various academic disciplines. I will hand over back to Dr. Oji to take us to the program and introduce the program for us.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ajiboye, for that brilliant introduction. So welcome again, everyone, to the reading series of the PragmaticPoint Study Group. As you must have seen on the flyer, this reading series is meant to help us collaborate as scholars, and the main goal is to help us deepen our understanding of pragmatic theories, methodologies, and influential works in the field. And as a result, we're going to be having two outstanding scholars tonight with us that are going to help us identify the arguments, the motivations of the texts, which we all must have had access to and reviewed by now. They'll also help us to appreciate the theoretical principles that guide the key proposals or tenets of the theory. And we're also going to look at how it connects to other aspects or approaches in the discipline. And beyond their taking us through all of it, we're also expecting a robust kind of interaction from everyone. So please, let's not let them do all the talking, although they're going to both speak to us for 30 minutes each, after which we're going to use the last 30 minutes to critically engage their discussions by asking questions, making contributions, and we'll all be the better for it. So I'd like to introduce our speakers. The first person there is Dr. Peter Ochefogbe. I hope I got that correctly, sir. He's an associate professor of English, and he's the acting head of the Department of English and Literary Studies, Federal University, Lokoja, Nigeria. His research expertise lies at the intersection of pragmatics and critical discourse analysis, where he explores how language functions in especially religious and political contexts to shape meaning, identity, and power dynamics. He has successfully supervised to completion a number of master's students and a few doctoral students in this area. So please use your virtual hands and give a resounding welcome and applause to Dr. Peter Ogbe. Thank you very much for doing that. Okay, it's like we don't know where, I was wondering where I haven't been seeing this. Please use, let's clap. And I'm seeing the hands coming up. Thank you. All right. Now, the second person is dear Dr. Christabel Onyema. She is an associate professor in the Department of English and Literary Studies, Imo State University, Owerri, Nigeria. She has authored many articles in local and international journals, especially in linguistics, stylistics, pragmatics, and also discourse analysis. And she's happily married with children. So please, again, let's have a resounding welcome with our virtual hands for Dr. Onyema. Beautiful. Thank you for that. Let me add my own. Good. All right, so we're now going to make way for our scholars to tell us about variational pragmatics. I'm going to be taking notes, and then I also love to see us all participate in the discussion. So I'd like to make room now for the two doctors. What's your arrangement? Who's coming up first? Would that be Dr. Okpe or Dr. Onyema?
No, Dr. Onyema.
Okay, Dr. Onyema, you have the floor now.
Thank you. Okay, good evening, Professor, senior colleagues, and other scholars present. Okay, I'm going to start with the following areas. I'll start with introduction, arguments and motivations around the variation of pragmatic theory, then the theoretical framework, the principles and methodologies of variational pragmatics. So I'm going to be sharing my slides now. Okay, so starting with introduction, the theory of variational pragmatics was officially introduced in 2005 at the 19th International Pragmatics Conference held in Italy by Klaus Schneider and Baron in the panel called Variational Pragmatics, Cross-Cultural Approaches, with a paper on variational pragmatics, Contours of a New Discipline. Variational pragmatics is a sub-discipline of pragmatics and is related to a range of other branches of pragmatics, which also examine pragmatic differences such as historical pragmatics, intercultural pragmatics, cross-cultural pragmatics, post-colonial pragmatics, to mention a very few. Variational pragmatics deals with how language use varies within a language as a result of such macro-social factors as region, socioeconomic variation, ethnic identity, gender, and age. It is situated at the intersection of pragmatics and social linguistics, or more specifically, of modern dialectology, which studies both regional and social variation. So these areas, which covers all areas of language variation in social linguistics. So it studies how language use conventions and pragmatic patterns vary across different national, regional, and social varieties of the same language. So from the point of view of variational pragmatics, pragmatics and the language system are perceived as two domains complementing each other and integrating with each other. So what are the arguments for variational pragmatics among other sub-disciplines of pragmatics? According to the text we studied, the impact of such factors as social class, age, and especially region on language use has been largely neglected in the field of pragmatics, particularly in empirical speech act-based work. Thus, variational pragmatics addresses two complementary research gaps, which are: one, it is aimed at introducing the examination of regional and social variation in pragmatics research. 2, it is aimed at adding the pragmatic level to the other levels very greatly analyzed in dialectology. That is especially, these levels are phonology, lexics, and morphosyntax, etc. So in summary, the aim of variational pragmatics is the dialectologization of pragmatics and the pragmatization of dialectology. Okay, so let's look at the theoretical framework governing its key proposals. The framework of variational pragmatics could be said to be eclectic, integrating different approaches. Variational pragmatics essentially distinguishes 5 primary levels of analysis, and these are the formal level, which focuses on the question of the communicative function of individual forms. So the analytical approach at this level is the form to function mapping. So it integrates the functions analyzed by a single form across varieties, and also how a single function may be realized using different forms across varieties. So such areas like discourse markers and other areas like tag questions are normally used at this level. Then we have the actional level, which is the level of linguistic action. This level deals with speech art analysis. That is how particular speech arts such as request, promise, or apology, refusals, offers, etc. are realized in different intralingual varieties. Thus, the aim at this level is to identify the linguistic realizations with which the illocutionary acts can be performed. Here, the approach is function to form mapping, unlike in the formal level. So here, analysis focuses on such social pragmatic question like who uses which realization of a given speech art, to whom, and other which circumstances, and also on such pragma-linguistic questions which relate to strategy, choice, and realization. That has to do with the realization strategies and the concrete linguistic choices made when applying these strategies.
Sorry to interrupt you, Dr. Onyema. Is it possible to
Okay.
share your screen so we can all follow with you?
Oh, I thought I did. Okay, sorry.
We can't see your screen.
Oh, sorry. Let me go back. What
All
happened?
right. Can you share? Can you confirm if you can share your screen?
Yes, let me do that. I was already at the Zoom net. Okay,
Can you see the share button?
I have.
Okay.
Okay, can you see it now?
So what we're seeing is your Chrome browser.
Okay.
Yes.
Can you see the screen now?
Okay, good. So
Okay.
would you like to use
Recap.
the slideshow so that it shows it in a much bolder way?
Okay.
can click on the slideshow at the top. Just before review, the options there. To your left, top left. Yes. So you know where you have your file, home, insert, design, transitions, animations, then that's slideshow.
Wait, let me get it.
Okay.
Unstable network.
Sorry, have you seen the slideshow option?
Have self-view.
Sorry, I didn't get that.
Is it clearer?
No, have you clicked on the slideshow option?
Do you see my cursor? Can I see my cursor on the screen?
No, sir.
Okay. Fred, can you help out?
Yeah, sir. There is hello, Doc. There is a little icon on the top. Look at the insert. Where you have insert, on top of insert, you have that button. No, you have removed it. Go back to your PowerPoint, man. I think you have closed your PowerPoint. The
Yeah, Ruth,
PowerPoint
can she
is
just continue? Can she just continue? I think it's taking too long. Let her just continue. We are picking a few things from the presentation. Let her continue, Ruth.
No, yes, I think it's her network also.
our
Yeah.
network has logged out.
Yes.
It's from my network.
Okay.
Your PowerPoint is still not displayed. You have closed the PowerPoint.
No, let her just continue. Dr. Onyema, please just continue because it's taking so long. You can continue from where you stopped.
Okay, sir.
Please, yeah. So Ruth, let's allow this to go. So
fine.
Peter, please ensure that the slides are shared immediately. And continue, please. So we save the time.
Okay.
You can stop sharing. Click on stop sharing and then just continue discussing.
Good night, sir. Okay.
Okay, but you can see my share, the screen I'm sharing.
Right. Are you not
I don't
supposed
know
to?
what is happening.
No, we can't see. Just continue from where you stopped.
Okay, sir.
Don't share anymore. Just go ahead.
Okay.
Dr. Yema, if you insist on sharing, there is a button on top of your insert. Insert. You look at the top ribbon.
Okay, but can you
see
see the
insert.
screen now?
There's a little button, there's a tiny icon there. You can click on it. The top ribbon, you see insert. On top of insert, there is an icon there you can click on. Insert. That's not where insert is, ma. Move your cursor down to the left.
Fred, can she just continue? Let her use this as it is, please.
Okay,
It's
ma'am.
taking so long. It has
On
taken
the
up
left.
to 10 minutes. No, let
Yeah,
her just
after that.
continue. Please go
After
ahead.
that.
Just go ahead. Just go ahead with this for now, please. It's taking so long. Continue, please. Dr. Onyema, please continue.
Okay, can you now see it?
Yeah, we can see. Just go ahead. Just go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, I stopped at the third level. That's the interactive level. This level extends beyond the individual speech act to sequential patterns. So the units examined here are dialogic and range from longer stretches of discourse to complete conversations, such as adjacency pairs and conversational openings and closings. So from this level, one can study the way Irish and Americans open and close service interactions or telephone conversations. Then we have the topic level. The topic level
Hello? Is in my computer?
No, Prof. I think the network has kicked out the speaker. Just wait for a bit. All right, I'm wondering if Dr. Ope can take over as we wait for Dr. Nyema to return so that we don't lose much more time. Dr. Peter Ope, is that possible?
Yes, it is.
Okay, please stand in, and when she comes, you can just adjust.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Oji.
Right.
Thanks to our team lead, Professor Akino Dogumi, for this opportunity to participate at this level, engaging the theory in question. My colleague already started to lay the conceptual issues from where I am to engage the theory with regards to its connections with other pragmatic principles, its strength and limitations, and then to make the concluding statements. I would just continue from where she stopped. I don't know if my slides can be seen. I have an outline which I'm trying to share.
We can't see it yet. Have you shared it?
Yeah, I'm trying to share now.
Okay, so.
Can you see it now?
It's coming up. Yes, yes, we can see
All
it.
right, so this is my outline. The first thing I want to begin to do quickly is to establish an introduction, which was what my colleague was trying to do before we lost her. And the introduction has to do with the nature of a pragmatic variation as a hybrid theory. Hybrid theory in the sense that it borrows insights from a number of other linguistic theories and approaches. And like she was trying to establish, this is understandable when you look at the context of the gaps that necessitate the emergence of variational pragmatics. On the one hand, we have the absence of a pragmatic insight in modern dialectology. And then on the other hand, we have the failure of pragmatics to account for the social macro factors that are needed in the analysis of pragmatic phenomena. So in between these two broad extremes, pragmatic variational theory emerges from these interdisciplinary efforts to account for the impact of social macro factors in intralingual pragmatic variation. We are saying this to establish the fact that it is on the basis of this hybridity of the theory that we can account for its connections with other such linguistic approaches and principles as variational social linguistics, contrastive pragmatics, intercultural pragmatics, postcolonial pragmatics, cross-cultural pragmatics, interlingual pragmatics, and ethno-pragmatics. Because of our time, I've isolated just about 3 of them. And what I intend to do is to interrogate the connections that variational pragmatics has with these linguistic principles and how the two approaches can align in the analysis of pragmatic data. So we go straight to the first one, which is variational pragmatics and intercultural pragmatics. As contained in the theory, it is established that variational pragmatics is a sub-discipline of intercultural pragmatics. And there are other such sub-disciplines. And this, of course, explains why there is a connection between it and intercultural pragmatics. Intercultural pragmatics is like a broad umbrella under which you will have contrastive pragmatics, cross-cultural pragmatics, interlingual pragmatics, ethno-pragmatics, and post-colonial pragmatics. Now, coming to intercultural pragmatics and how it relates to variational pragmatics. Intercultural pragmatics deals with language use in communication between people or speakers who do not share the same native language. And Barron 2005 differentiates 2 constellations under intercultural pragmatics. The first constellation is the native speaker versus non-native speaker communication. What this implies is a communication or communicative context where the language of communication is native to one of the interlocutors and non-native to the other interlocutor. That is the native versus non-native speaker communication. That is the first constellation under intercultural pragmatics. The second constellation under intercultural pragmatics is a situation where the 2 interlocutors emerge from different linguistic backgrounds. In other words, the language that is being used for communication is neutral to both of them. Now, having established that, the question that we should be asking is what then is the connection of variational pragmatics with intercultural pragmatics? I already established that to say that variational pragmatics emerges, is a sub-area in intercultural pragmatics. And the connection between them can also be further established when we understand the fact that both approaches, they deal with variational issues in language use. But this, in this case, from the perspective of cultural orientations. So that is that about variational pragmatics and intercultural pragmatics. The second proposal that we want to quickly look at that connects with intercultural, with variational pragmatics is, excuse me. Is variational pragmatics and contrastive pragmatics. Variational pragmatics and contrastive pragmatics. Contrastive pragmatics is a sub-area, like I hinted earlier, of intercultural pragmatics. And as an approach to pragmatic analysis, contrastive pragmatics relates to pragmatic phenomena across different languages. In this case, the comparison is made between two languages. And as a role, in contrastive pragmatics, the focus is to establish areas of divergences, areas of pragmatic divergences between the two languages that are being compared. And it is established in literature that contrastive pragmatics is often motivated by teaching and translation concerns, aiming to identify and explain differences in how meaning is conveyed and understood across different language boundaries. Now, what do we now say is a connection between variational pragmatics and contrastive pragmatics? Both contrastive pragmatics and variational pragmatics are connected in terms of comparative analysis and in terms of pragmatic focus. There is also a connection in terms of their methodological overlap. And by that, what I mean is that both approaches employ similar methodologies, such as discourse analysis, corpus linguistics, and experimental pragmatics in the analysis of data. We proceed now to look at variational pragmatics and its connection with post-colonial pragmatics. Post-colonial pragmatics studies how communication reflects cultural transfers and indigenous influences in post-colonial society. Usually, the focus of post-colonial pragmatics is in erstwhile post-colonial societies. For instance, Nigeria, for example, will serve as a context for that. So when we want to look at how the indigenous experiences, our social linguistic experiences, our cultural experiences as Nigerians impact on the variety of English that we use, you see, that falls within the domain of post-colonial pragmatics. When we look at how these social linguistic experiences impact on our pragmatic norms with regards to the use of the English language. Now, in establishing the connection between the two, between variational pragmatics and post-colonial pragmatics, we would say that they connect because post-colonial pragmatics focuses on how societal factors interact with post-colonial contexts to create unique pragmatic patterns using frameworks of variational pragmatics to analyze specific features within this diverse and hybrid linguistic environment. Like I stated earlier, within the context of Nigeria, where the variety of English being used has been deeply influenced by sociocultural experiences of the Nigerian people, variational pragmatics can provide a framework by which we can analyze these pragmatic variations between, for instance, British English and the indigenized varieties of the English language as used within the Nigerian context. The last connection I want to establish before we look at its strengths and weaknesses has to do with variational pragmatics and interlanguage pragmatics. By way of summary, interlanguage pragmatics focuses on competence, the competence of language users, where the language in question is a foreign language to them, and is often deployed within the context of pedagogy. Again, we can establish that there is a context, there is a connection between this approach, that is interlingual pragmatics and variational pragmatics, in the sense that both approaches, in a sense, they also focus on pragmatic variations. So what we have succeeded to do in the first part of this presentation is to establish how variational pragmatics is a hybrid theory. Hybrid theory because it connects with a lot of other linguistic approaches in the analysis of pragmatic phenomenon with regards to the issue of variation. The next thing I want to quickly look at is the strength of variational pragmatics. As we look at the theory, the first thing that stands out about variational pragmatics is its interventionist, its interventionist orientation. We can argue that variational pragmatics is interventionist. How do we mean by interventionist? Like we established at the beginning of the presentation, the context that necessitated the emergence of this theory there are gaps between two approaches. So it is interventionist in trying to bridge the gap between modern dialectology and then pragmatic analysis. And we consider that to be a very major strength of the theory. Then secondly, the theory's emphasis on empirical data, I think to me, this is also another major strength of the theory in ensuring that the findings are grounded in actual language use and not fabricated data. What that suggests for scholars is that the theory, when appropriately deployed, can ensure objectivity. The findings of the study that deployed the theory can ensure objectivity, reliability, and validity. And this is a major strength of the theory. Apart from that, in triangulating insight from diverse linguistic theories and principles like I established, variational pragmatics serves as a comprehensive framework that provides a deeper understanding of intralingual pragmatic variation in languages. You see, this is a strength because the biases and limitations associated with the use of a single theory are minimized because of how multifaceted the principles it borrowed from are. We can also say that the theory has a strength in terms of its methodological principles. If we engage with the document that Dr. Oji shared for us on the platform, we'll realize, and I was imagining, I'm sure when my colleague comes up, she may want to talk about the issues of contrastivity and comparability as part of the analytical layers in the use of the theory. This is strength. And how is that? Is it a strength to the theory? It is a strength because it makes its findings to be more valid. Validity in this case is established if two languages are contrasted and compared. It will be easy to establish whether a given pragmatic phenomenon is variety exclusive or variety preferential. So it is a strength to the theory. We can also argue that the interdisciplinary nature of the theory makes its findings, that is the findings of study that deploy it, to have wider and practical applications to many areas of the society, such as language teaching, for example, communication training, for example, and intercultural communication. This is also one of the key strengths of the theory. Now, we will try to round up this session by looking at what we have considered to be some of the limitations of the theory. The first limitation, as we engage with the theory, also lies with its interdisciplinary orientation. Yeah, we established at the beginning that this is a strength, but in this strength, there is also a weakness. And the weakness we perceive as we engage with some of the studies that have deployed this theory is that there is what appears to be an overemphasis in focusing on L1 varieties to the neglect of non-native varieties. If you go to check most of the studies that engage deploy this theory, you would find that even though the theory is interdisciplinary, it tends to favor more, whether by design or by whatever means, L1 variety. And if we want to talk about pragmatic variations, we know, especially from the context of Africa, and particularly Nigeria, that our native languages have a lot of varieties. But the theory does not seem, at least based on the studies that have engaged it, to cater for non-native variety. This is why you will find in most of the studies is either it is English language, Spanish, German, and other such languages that are native to the areas. Now, secondly, we find that although the theory is able to account for the impact of macro-social factors, which is so key to the theory, such as age, region, social class, and ethnicity, the impact of these factors on pragmatic variations, we noticed that there is no clear-cut operationalization of the impacts of the interplay of these factors on pragmatic variation in language varieties. I particularly took out time to look at some of the studies that engage the theory. And what I found was that in most of these studies, they single out maybe one of the factors. So, but we feel that in real language situation, some of these factors could, there's a sort of interplay between them. So we found that a clear-cut explanation of how these factors are operationalized in bringing about a pragmatic variation is not so clear. And this to me appears like a gap in the theory. Furthermore, the theory this might not be by design again, but the theory appears to focus more on pluricentric languages. Now, languages that have officially recognized varieties in other countries, such as English, German, Dutch, French, Arabic. And this focus is also to the neglect of other languages outside of this category. We find that to be some sort of limitation as far as the theory is concerned. Now, because of this concentration of pluricentric languages in the theory, what appears to be like it, to the neglect of the other languages that do not belong in that category, we argue here that since most African languages do not fall into the pluricentric category, except a few languages like Hausa, Yoruba, Swahili, and Fulfulde. These are the few African languages that fall within the pluricentric category. And since the theory seems to favor these pluricentric languages more, we want to argue that variational pragmatics appears to be unintentionally Eurocentric in its focus, because most of these pluricentric languages are Eurocentric languages, European languages. And then part of the weakness, as we saw in engaging with the theory, is it's what looks like the theories, the methodology of its data collection, the use of questionnaire, role play interviews, they are often emphasized as methods of data collection in the theory. Now, as researchers, we know that these methods have their weaknesses in a manner that impacts on the quality of the data. For example, questionnaire can generate the response bias, limited control when it comes to role play, corpora, and all of these, the effects of participation's awareness. We feel that because the theory relies so much on these instruments, this could have some sort of effect on the quality of its data. Then finally, there must also be, this is more like a suggestion, because of an observation we consider to be a limitation, the need to widen the theory further to include written discourses. Again, if you find out most of the studies on that deploy the theory, they seem to be more of spoken languages. Well, I do not know if this is deliberate or if it is a call for scholars to begin to deploy the theory within the context of written discourses as well. I want to conclude my part of the presentation by saying that variational pragmatics has made significant contribution to our understanding of language variation and its use in context. However, further, it is still needed. We are suggesting that variational pragmatics could also benefit from incorporating insights from critical discourse analysis. And the reason for that is most of the social macro factors that are highlighted as a basis for variation in the theory, age, sex, region, ethnicity, social class, we believe that these social macro factors, they also have critical discourse analysis perspective, especially with regards to power dynamics, social inequality, ideological assumptions. We believe that if variational pragmatics incorporates insights from critical discourse analysis, it can provide a deeper understanding of how language variation reflects and shapes social contexts. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. A, for that brilliant presentation. Can we please appreciate him by using our virtual hands to clap? You can clap, you can use different emojis. Let's do that, please. Thank you, sir. Okay, good.
Thank you very much, Dr. Oji.
Yes, nice. So I would like to know if Dr. Nyema is back here now and if she would like to.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Welcome back. Is there any other aspect of the presentation that you'd like to throw a bit more light on before we open the floor for questions and answers?
Yes, I still have, I think, the last two slides.
Oh,
okay, let me try.
Okay, maybe you can incorporate them when responding to questions so that we can just go ahead with the discussions if you don't mind. Yes. So I see a question in the chat box. Someone says, could you throw some light on the dichotomy between dialectology and pragmatics, as variational pragmatics as interventionist seeks to bridge this gap? I hope you understand that question. What's the dichotomy between dialectology and pragmatics? So the question is thrown open to the two speakers, and after responding to it, the floor will then be open for us all to discuss. What's your own take on variational pragmatics based on your reading of the text and further readings? What did you find?
Can I comment on the question? Or
Yes,
would Dr.
Go ahead, sir.
All right, thank you very much. The dichotomy between dialectology and pragmatics or variational pragmatics, I didn't quite get that. But if it's about dichotomy between the two approaches, Dialectology, which is a branch of social linguistics, focuses more on the language system. So in dialectology, you can find issues of grammar, issues of pronunciation, issues of just the system that makes up the language system. While pragmatics, and of course in this context, variational pragmatics, focuses more on how social factors impact on language use. I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, I suppose so. If the person who asked the question needs more light, I suppose they could unmute and talk. Thank you. So I'd like to open the floor now to the audience who would like to interrogate, discuss. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, hello, Prof. Ruth.
Yes, go
Yeah,
ahead.
this is Sasu. Nice seeing you. Wanted to say hi from the very beginning. Yeah, so I think I asked the question regarding the dialectology and that of pragmatics. So I think the answer he gave is satisfies me. I'm okay with it. So thank you.
Well, that's good to know. Thank you very much for confirming that the answers are satisfactory. So let's open the floor now. Did we all go through the text? What more can we add? The two speakers have been able to help us appreciate the principles behind variational pragmatics. Yes, Professor Odebomi, please.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ruth. The two speakers spoke straight to the theory. And I think we really got to know about the theory from the presentations. Where the difference might be the amount of dependence that the speakers have on the material that they had. Notwithstanding that, we really got the main points that we wanted. For example, from the first presentation, we were able to see all those factors that we can say make up the concept of variational pragmatics, and to some extent, how it gets consolidated as a theory of pragmatics. And so one area I want to, where I'm not going to ask any question anyway, it's not really needed because I know the theory, I read it, and I also I want to discuss it at another level. But you know what I want to just add is the application. How do we apply this? And you know, the interesting thing about variational pragmatics is we are talking about internal variation. That's to say that the variation within a language. But you know, when you're talking about the language here, you might be talking about several things, and that's why it's very important. We are talking about English, for example. If you say speakers of English in Nigeria, they are just too diverse. Speakers of English in Nigeria, people speak English in Nigeria, and we understand each other very well. But we understand each other from, you know, very interesting and very diverse perspectives. If I speak English and I'm speaking to Professor Onyema, you know, we might ultimately not understand each other very well because, you know, there will be influences of the ethnicity. She's Igbo, I'm Yoruba. You know, she will be influenced by the Igbo background. I'll be influenced by the Yoruba background. And again, you know, the region where you come from will really matter a lot. Another thing to really take note of here is the age. You know, what age itself, even when you are speaking the same variety and you have the same exposure, variational pragmatics still applies. Because if I say I want to eat, and my daughter of say 6 years old says she wants to eat, you know, eat might mean different things depending on precisely the context and how it's said and where, you know, the exposure. And of course, there are so many things we say that will be influenced by how old we are, how mature we are, how exposed we are to the culture, even when we are speaking the same language. And that's why I really like the fact that the theory is able to clearly tell itself from post-colonial pragmatics, developed by my friend in Bayreuth. Okay, so that's one area. The application really matters. What type of data do we use? What type of data do we use? How do we apply the data? But I also want to quickly comment on some of the limitations pointed out by Peter. Yes, some of them would be good points, but some of them would just be the way we look at the theory. When it comes to applying the theory, you can't use all aspects of the theory. You just pick only those aspects that you think are applicable. And the fact that it's not extended to non-pluricentric languages does not mean that it can't be applied. It's only a matter of how popular is it. It's not really popular here. This is the first time we are officially talking about variational pragmatics. I can assure you, Peter, that you can apply this to data in Yoruba and it's going to really fit perfectly. So it depends on how well it is applied. And so let's encourage it. Let's see how well it gets adapted to our different contexts. Unfortunately, Baron wanted to be here, and Anne wanted to be here, but she told me a few days ago that she has an engagement in northern Germany. Now this place where Zika will know that place, I can't remember, very close to Lüneburg, where she lives. She told me she has an engagement there. That's why she's not here. But she's going to have this video, and I'm very sure she's going to give us her responses. And I know she will like it. But one good thing is this, that the limitations are very good, as pointed out, because no theory is sufficient in its own right. A theory thrives with the reactions and then the engagement of other scholars. And so with that, I think it's really been a very good treat that we have got this evening. Thank you very much. So I stop here for others to make their comments.
Thank you, Prof. Debumi. Yes, Professor Schroeder.
Thank you. For me, variation theory was a new thing. So I read through what was sent to me, and I have a few comments on what they sound maybe a little bit critical, but we could still engage in it and hopefully come out with a good solution. I wanted to ask particularly the first presenter, what did you expect us, what did you want to communicate? My critique on it is it seemed to me that you did just a bit of copy paste from what we already read. And I'm just about to teach my students that they cannot put a slide by copy paste from what they have written down and have a slide which is full of information from the very beginning to the end. Because imagine the listener, imagine the audience. How do they catch what do you really communicate? I think headings and bullets are here you could have done much more in communicating, both of you actually, the main points of the theory by just changing the PowerPoint and putting it in a different format. That is my first thing. What I'm also missing very, very much in this place is examples. I don't know how much you understand that examples carry the argument. So in order to have an effect on bringing about these new ideas of the theory, it would have just been very, very good to bring examples, even if it's a book examples. The best would have been if you have tried out the theory and would have brought some examples from your own research. But even that, some examples from the book would have helped the communication of the theory of what you want to say. So for me, that is because the theory talks about objectivity, reliability, and validity, and strengthens that it has to be examples and not doctored examples, but genuine examples. So if the theory wants to achieve that, why not bring examples to bring the point home? And then I have now a theoretical question. For me, and maybe I'm wrong and I'm willing to be corrected, pragmatics is all about context. And it's about language use and how you learn to use context. Now, in this case, we are very close in variation pragmatics. We are very close to the linguistic analysis, which I also is my background. My background is actually morphosyntax and discourse and really SIL training. Do all this first before you move into context. What is the role of context, really language use, in this theory, besides just saying it? Where can we see it? Where do we have evidence that this theory really gives us a new angle of what is already there? Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Schroeder, for those insightful comments that you made there. Professor Dabumi, you wanted to say something? Okay, I thought I noticed you unmuted. Okay. I don't know if the presenters would like to make a quick response here to the observations and comments by Professor Schroeder. Yes, Professor Odebumi, please.
Well, you know, Professor Schroeder is a veteran.
Yes, please.
You know, when she asks a question, you have to think twice to answer. So I don't blame the presenters if they want to take some time to think about the questions. But you know, I sympathize with that perspective. It doesn't, you know, sympathy doesn't mean that I'm worried, but it simply means I support what she has said. Because, you know, the question of context is very important. It's actually if there is no context, there is no pragmatics. You know, the basic definition of pragmatics that is acceptable to all of us in pragmatics is that pragmatics is the study of language in the context of use and users. And so you have to have the use, you also have to have the users. And so what's the context in which they are relating? I know that Anne Baron has worked extensively with the theory, and she has used data from dating. I know that we are working on a paper together with Anne Baron on dating. And you know, one aspect of context, as I think is important here, is, you know, not necessarily where you have the declarative context anyway. The declarative, the a priori matters a lot. Okay, in relational pragmatics, these are things you have known before you come into the interaction. And so, just like Peter said, some of this might be ideological to some extent, and it's unfortunate ideology isn't really much into it. And that's one major point that has to be noted. For example, in one of the data sets that we are using for the research we are working on with Anne, there is this question of who pays the bill in first dates. Is it the man or the woman? And so when you have I'll pay is a single expression that can be said by any of the persons in dating. But you know, the context will vary. Some will say I'll pay because I'm a man. Some will say, I'll pay because I have the money. So it's about what cognitive context I will bring into it, what social context I will bring into the table. These are some of the issues that really call for a lot of attention. And so here context comes into play, and some other places too. And when it comes to ethnicity, the problem with ethnicity is that it goes more into social linguistics. And of course, when you're talking about social linguistics in pragmatics, we want to be careful, particularly when it comes to looking at what is for the society and what's for the individual. And so for us, the individual context will matter. For social linguistics, the larger societal context will matter, but then context is context also, it will vary. And that's why in pragmatics, we rely more on what we have from Levinson 1979 of the notion of activity type. We rely more on that when it's contrasted with Himes 1974, which is the concept of speaking, which is more general than what we have in the notion of activity type. And of course, if you go into books like Thomas 1995, you go to May 2001, you go into Vesturen 1992, and so forth. You have all of these aspects of context being emphasized. And of course, you know that we are currently working on a theory together with Elga and Jane. And these are some of the aspects we're also trying to work on. Pragmatics could be really tricky. And if you are not careful, you don't really get to understand what makes your entry point really distinct. And that's why I agree with Elga, but there are ways where contexts have come into the picture. Thank you very much. Yeah, so others can contribute. I think Fred has.
Okay. Yes, thank you very much, Professor Debome. I'd like to say something before I call on Dr. John to tell us what he has in mind. And I also see another question in the chat box, so this is good. Professor Schroeder, when I think about variational pragmatics, I look at it from the lens of our own context here in Nigeria, because we tend to use the language in so many ways, especially the English language. We look at pragmatic features like greetings, requests, refusals, politeness, things, pragmatic markers like that. And we see that they vary across different regions, even here in Nigeria, or when we compare Nigeria to the British or to the Americans. And it's something about the meaning and what's inferred or what's communicated. So we see that kind of variation happening there. So if I look at the matter of greetings, for example, in Nigeria, would like to put a bit of weight and extension in our greetings to say, good morning, sir, how are you today? How is the family? How is work? We ask all of those questions because we think it's respectful, but for the Britons, it would almost always be direct. Morning, how are you? And that's if how are you is even included. So these kinds of things we might begin to look at and say, what has brought about them, and we see that it's the thing of the variation, the nuances, the context as we have them here. Again, if we talk about requests, I remember one research done by Professor Debome and some of the other colleagues at the last APRA conference, and how please is one marker that's so predominant in Nigerian English, and maybe, yes, not even as much in Ghanaian English. And you see that because we do feel like we have to show respect to a large extent, we are always saying please, prefacing our request with please. We have this strong sense of hierarchy that we must acknowledge the people before us. And if you must say no to a request, it's usually difficult to just say no. We'll say, you know how things are these days. It's not so easy for me to, and we're trying to pad the expressions before we are able to get the meaning communicated to say we can't do it. But in other climes, we might have situations where they just say, oh, sorry, I can't. And that's it. So I believe that these are areas we can begin to look at how variational pragmatics helps us to understand the language, whether in films, in music, and normal day-to-day classroom discourse and stuff like that. And the last one that comes to my mind is the kind of address that I noticed that Dr. Ajiboye made when he was greeting Professor Debome. You'd always hear us, almost all of us who are his mentees, will always refer to him as Oga. Good evening, Oga. Thank you, Oga. You know, it comes from the place of how deeply our culture has tended to influence our use of the language. So I'm just saying that in all of these areas and even more, we might have examples of how to deploy variational pragmatics in our research. So I hope that was useful. I'd like to now call on Dr. Freud. Yeah.
You added exactly what I wanted to hear.
Okay.
How can we now, you see, the more or less just linguistic code model, I say, to combine it with the context. And that is what was needed in the presentation. So you see what I mean? I'm not saying that you can't do it, but it was not shown. So thank you, Ruth, for putting exactly this context, the whole theory into a very good perspective.
Thank you, Prof. Well, part of the expectation is that the rest of us would look at the theory and also come here to make propositions while the speakers would speak to the theory. But we appreciate that point of view. So, Dr. Freud, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Good
Okay,
evening.
please, let's hear you.
I would like to thank everyone that has spoken, from my Oga, Professor Debumi, Professor Elga, and then the two presenters, Dr. Okpe and Dr. Onyema. I want to briefly, I don't know if it will be a contribution or a question in the end. And I want, Oga really spoke, and when Oga clarified the issue of context, it assuaged my mind of something that I was thinking about the theory. Because when I read it, I didn't see too much emphasis on context. And then when the proponent of the theory would reconceptualize the issue of the macro context. So I began to ask the question to myself that now what then characterize the micro contextual variables? If the proponent of the theory has conceptualized it as macro social factors, looking at age, looking at gender, and those social linguistic factors. So I began to think that could these micro contextual variables become situational in that context? Because when Oga gave the example of the dating, he talked about the context of affordability, or the context of who is male, who is the right person to pay. So I began to say possibly that the micro contextual variables that now determine interactions in variational pragmatics might be situational more than the physical. Or then something also struck my imagination on the level of formality, because variational pragmatics also brought in the notion of formality of language use. So in terms of formality of language use, it means that language can be universal. In some, for instance, when we look at the standard variation, if one want to communicate in the standard environment or settings, it means that that language may not be variational in the sense we might understand in different variation, but one will expect that in standard situations, one will expect levels of formality to be universal. So, and then another question will now be that, can we have generic structural potentials of culture systems in variational pragmatics? So that means that people from different regions now having their own generic potentials, and those from other regions or those from other genders or age grade having their own generic potentials. So lastly, they are focused on the systematicity, now shows that variations are random.
Okay.
So we can have random variations, and random variations possibly seem to pose the question, how random can that be, especially within the same region? So do we take, or how is it possible for us to use in certain regions, particular speakers as, or if, let's say if we get to the native speakers, how do we randomly choose standard among standard or non-standard among non-standard? So I began to problematize that issue of systematicity, and I don't know if we can elaborate further on it. Thank you.
Okay. I think that the conversation may have to continue on our WhatsApp group because we need to wrap up in the next 3 minutes. But beautiful insights there that you share. Thank you so much, Dr. Fred. And I see Dr. Nyema's hand up, and I'm wondering if you could speak to us in about 2 minutes. Dr. Nyema, please.
Okay. Okay, I want to respond to aspects of these last speaker's question. So it's not just macro social factors that are considered in this theory. There are also aspects of micro social variation considered, and these have to do with factors as power and distance. So you could be studying speakers that have equal social status, maybe workmates, friends, neighbors, age mates, or you could also study speakers that are of different social status. Maybe you're studying speeches from employers and employees, teacher versus students, etc. So it's not just about macro social factors. Micro social factors are also considered in the study. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. And I'm sure that Dr. Fred could keep this conversation going right there and in the group. Dr. Jiboye.
All right, thank you. I just want to respond to some concerns raised by Dr. Fred as touching to the.
Yes, would you be able to do that very briefly? Because
just briefly, just maybe 1 or 2, 3 sentences.
Okay, all right.
All right. Yeah, if you look at definition and pragmatics very well, there has been this kind of notion that is actually deeply rooted in Labovian paradigm. And if you know William Labov, is a social linguistics coming up with those variables that we are talking about in the social linguistic analysis. But the issue there is that these variables are actually put into pragmatic level and they are contextualized. And that's actually narrowed down to what we've been discussing about the issue of context. So when all these variables are actually put into the contextual use of usage, as rightly said by Ogad, when was talking about age grade, when someone is talking and in language use, then we have variational pragmatics. So we cannot actually divorce the social-linguistic variable from variational pragmatics, but it goes beyond social linguistics in the sense that it is now put into pragmatic context. Then we now have pragmatic variables as those cues that could be used for variational pragmatics. Thank you.
Yes, another beautiful one there. Thank you very much, Dr. Jiboye. All right, the question in the chat box, please, Dr. Ndeche, you talked about using post-colonial pragmatics in analysis of languages in social interaction. Well, I think that they would oblige or plead with the presenters to please give a response in the chat room, and I believe you're all there. So let's see if that gets to be responded to. Let me use the opportunity to thank you all for joining, and I'm going to hand over now to Dr. Ajiboye so that he rounds off and then takes us to Olga. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Dr. Hoji. Thank you for the beautiful coordinations, and to our presenters. Before I will say anything, I think I will hand over to Oga for the final word, and he will disperse us till we meet next month.
Well, you have said everything. We have a very good treat today, and honestly, I can say that today is one of the best outings of our events. It's a well-engaged presentation. All aspects of the presentation, most aspects of the presentation have been usefully engaged, and it doesn't matter how many people you have in an event, an academic event, but the quality of the participation matters a lot. Starting from the presenters, both of whom are associate professors who found time to read the material and were able to make very, very useful presentations, and were able to really speak to the theory, will really be appreciated. We have the quality participation of our respected colleague, Professor Elgar Stroeder, who is very passionate not only about pragmatics, but also about pragmatic point. Elgar will really appreciate that. And of course, I saw Jane Oder. Jane Oder is the Vice President of African Pragmatics Association. I was very happy when I saw you here. And I was also very happy to see Professor Henry Hunjo, the head of Department of English at the Lagos State University. And the ICT team really did very well. The recording started very early, and James promised that we will have this before the end of the day or very early tomorrow morning, so we can share this. The officers of Pragmatic Point have done very well. As usual, we have the wonderful OG who moderated the program, the coordinator, Dr. Jiboye, others who are also members of the ESCO who weren't playing any role. I've also been here since the beginning of the program. We have all of you who have come here some of you did not speak because the points you wanted to make have been made, and so there's no need to repeat what someone has said. But I can assure you that the recording of this event will be passed on to Anne Baron, one of the proponents of the theory. And I can tell you, okay, Ake Samuel was here, thank you very much. I can tell you that Anne Baron may decide to also come and speak to us about the theory based on our observations. And so you can assure us that we'll be very happy to schedule an event where we will have an interaction with Baron, and Baron then, share from our knowledge of the theory. And I know that she will also benefit from some of the engagements that we have had today. So on this note, I say thank you to everyone, Simeon, Ruth, everyone who has really played a very beautiful role. Christabel Onyema, Peter Okwe, thank you both for that wonderful outing. We meet again next month by the grace of God. Before then, enjoy yourselves and keep doing pragmatics. Bye-bye to everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, sir. Bye,
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah.